the radiator heat. Anyway, hello everyone. Welcome to another Beehive Growth webinar. We're super excited to have you here. Um, let's see, we got 15 people in the room. We're expecting a pretty killer turnout today, so we will, sit here for just a minute while we wait for people to cycle in. In the meantime, anybody who's here already, kudos to you for being on time. Oh my God, Luxembourg. Have you ever seen the show Patriot on Amazon TV? It's like one of the best shows I've ever seen, and it takes place mostly in Luxembourg, just incidentally. But I love like the French accent of like the main character who's from Luxembourg. It's incredible. Go watch the show if you haven't seen it. It's amazing. It's called Patriot on Amazon Prime Video, not Prime TV. I'm like an alien. I'm like, hello, fellow humans. I've been watching shows on TV. Anyway, uh, cool. We got truly an international crowd today. We got Luxembourg, we got Mexico, and then we got the U.S., some Los Angeles, some Arkansas, some Philadelphia. Congrats. Thanks for beating the Chiefs. Costa Rica. I love Costa Rica. I was in Jaco a couple years ago. Just got it was in February 4 years ago. Just got like the event popping up in my Google Photos. Jacksonville, Florida, also close to my heart. When I was uh, like less than 1 year old, my mom and dad moved to Jacksonville because my dad was in the flight training school there. Arizona, Arizona's in the room. Fort Lauderdale, Lake Havasu City, Arizona. Okay, okay, cool. All right, we got 27 people here. Usually, I think we had what 180 RSVP, so usually we get about 40% turnout. So we will get started in just a second. We've got a lot to cover. We've got a great deck planned for you all today. Great presentation. Yeah, I would love to. Uh, Totally me asking the questions in the chat. Would love to hear the questions about monetization you guys have ahead of time. We will be dropping a Q&A link for you to submit those questions to, but our wonderful producer, Tony, our eyes in the sky, our guy, is going to be answering questions as they pop up in the chat. It keeps the conversation moving, keeps me focused. Suffer from debilitating ADD, and if I see the questions popping up in the chat, I will derail the entire presentation. But yeah, I would love to hear, like, as we're kind of getting started, what questions people have, and yeah, we will answer all of them. I promise. I promise. What's that? Today's Tuesday. Tuesday, February 18th. I got nothing on that. But it's a Tuesday, and we're still alive, which is great in itself. Cool, cool, cool. A lot of folks not monetizing yet. Sometimes it's just the little things, you know? The fact that we woke up and our feet are on the ground. That's a win for some people. All right, cool. Well, we'll get started. We'll let anybody else who wants to join trickle in as we go. Oh, that's a bummer. The little live stream button on my screen is not showing who's in the room versus who's on socials. That's annoying. Well, we are on LinkedIn. I see myself. Wow, this is just super trippy. Wait, let me just share my screen real quick. I'm freaking out right now. This is like crazy. This is crazy. I promise this is gonna be relevant. We're gonna get into it in just a minute. We are just saving time while people do this. Oh wait, that's not the screen I wanted. Where is it? LinkedIn. Check that out. I'm like talking to myself on a live stream on LinkedIn, talking to you guys. That's crazy. I don't know why that blows my mind a little bit, but cool. All right, well, we've tapped out. I don't think we've tapped out, but we've hit 29. It's been there for a minute. So we're going to get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is EJ White. I am the head of growth over here at Beehiiv, and we are so happy to have you here. And we're going to cover everything related to how to turn those opens and clicks into dollars and cents, otherwise known as income. And yeah, we got a lot to cover in the next hour. We'll probably go right up to the time, if not, potentially a minute or two over. I'll try to make sure that doesn't happen. But in any case, we will be providing the deck and all materials, anything that we reference in the presentation, we'll be providing that to you. You'll get an email in about an hour and 55 minutes, I think, is the timing of the automation with the link to where that'll live. Usually it takes us a couple days to get those up. And as I think about that, Tony, we need to update the statuses on those virtual events that we've done this week so that Tom gets working on the newest ones. Uh, cool. That's just in the Slack list. I don't know, maybe they have been kept up to date, but that's where he works from. Anyway, that doesn't matter to you guys. What you guys care about today is learning how to monetize your newsletter. And fortunately, we got answers. With that said, gonna start sharing my screen. Oh yeah, Vicky, I see that. Vicky and Eric, perfect. Cannot be the enemy of the good. We gotta get out. We gotta kind of get out of our heads and just be able to be comfortable with putting out something that's maybe not perfect, but is going to give us that feedback to succeed. But recognizing that is the first step. So I think you're on the right track. All right. Oh, you guys get a little bit of a preview of some other stuff I've been working on. Let's go over here. Tony, I started to like pull up the deck, and then I just totally did not pull up the deck. What did we call this one? Clicks into. This is so embarrassing. You guys get a great behind the opens into. Wrong. All right, it's here somewhere. Pay no attention to the man behind the screen. We'll use this one. I don't know if there's a specific one here. All right. Cool. So, oh, and this one does not have, I don't know if this is actually an updated one. Tony prepares some of these for me. I don't know if I think I fucked up a little bit. But Daniel Burke is obviously not joining us for this one. But in this case, this webinar, we will cover the groundwork of setting yourself up for success, and then talk about how you can monetize through a bunch of different tactics: sponsorship opportunities, paid subscriptions and membership, premium content offers, sponsored co-registration, affiliate marketing, job boards, and even more. So this covers most of the most common ways that people typically grow their newsletters. It's maybe not exhaustive. I couldn't say that we'd be able to give you every single way, because every time we kind of think we have a handle on every single way that people monetize, people are just so creative and really blow our minds with how they're able to add value and basically provide value to their customers. And so with that being said, we will cover, this is our agenda, Q&A link we shared before. All resources and recording and deck will be shared. There always is somebody who comes late, not one of the 29 people who are, the amazing folks who are here on time, but there will be somebody 29 plus who comes in and asks, hey, is this going to be recorded? And so we're going to do an exercise. Everybody's going to jump in, and as soon as they ask that, we're all going to say, yes, it's going to be recorded, because everybody always asks that question. All right. So first step, laying the groundwork. So we like to start from first principles whenever we do any of these presentations. So, I saw in the chat when we were getting started, a lot of folks have not monetized yet. And so, we're going to take a little bit of a beat, and this is, I promise you, is the most important part of the presentation, even though we're starting with it, because it's really the foundation from which everything else springs. And so, even though this doesn't specifically touch those things about how you get somebody to pay you $1 and how, you should structure your premium offers, this is more important than any of those things. And getting this right is really the most important part of running a newsletter. So laying the groundwork, there's more than 3 components. I guess for this presentation we had these 3 highlighted, but the 3 that are most important are understanding your audience, understanding your niche, and publishing consistently. And so I actually do like this more concise, just 3-item list, because it really does come down to those 3 things. The first, and not in any particular order, but we'll start with niche. Understanding your niche is really critical to knowing one, who your audience should be, or kind of giving you an idea of who your audience might be. And obviously, you need to know your niche before you can start writing, which means you have to know your niche before you start publishing consistently. Finding your niche is something that might hear a lot of influencers talk about, and it's the same for newsletters as it is for anything else. Understanding kind of what differentiates you and your content, and what unique value you bring to the world, is the most important exercise that you will go through when starting a newsletter. I like to use the illustration of kind of a very personal example. If I was to start a newsletter, let's say I was going to start a newsletter about nutrition. If I just was like, okay, great, I want to talk about nutrition. Maybe I had a background. Maybe I was a nutritionist, somebody with a credential of nutrition, and I said I wanted to start a newsletter about nutrition. Just writing a very general nutrition, newsletter would not succeed. Would most likely not succeed. When you think about kind of the broad and how broad nutrition is, there are people who think that being keto is like the way to be, or being carnivore. There's also people who would be horrified to hear that and think that being vegan is like the only way to be healthy and to be, eat nutritiously. So basically, it's just like there's so much broadness that if you just went to market with that kind of concept, you wouldn't really, people viewing your newsletter wouldn't really know whether it's for them or not, or whether it fits their worldview or fits what they're interested in. And so when we talk about the issue of a niche, I like to use the example of my girlfriend, who is pescatarian, gluten-free, and dairy-free. When we go out, it's a very restrictive way of eating, and when we go out, if we're meeting people, when she runs into somebody who has the same dietary restrictions, it's like a light bulb moment goes off for them. It's like two old friends meeting, because both of them have a shared experience that they can relate to in each other, in that they both have the same experiences of going to restaurants and not being able to choose anything off the menu, of worrying about cross-contamination and people not being sensitive to that. The snacks that they're able to eat easily, a lot of challenges around that. And so when you basically niche down, it really presents very clear opportunities to connect with your audience. So if I was to write this nutrition newsletter and focused on that specific niche, my marketing not only would be way easier to understand what I'm supposed to be talking about and how I'm supposed to communicate with my audience, but when I'm marketing that newsletter, it would be incredibly crystal clear who it's for. So if, for example, that person who has that dietary restriction is scrolling down Facebook and they see, oh my God, there's this newsletter with daily recipes for, easy daily recipes for folks who are pescatarian, gluten-free, dairy-free, that speaks directly to them, and you're going to have a very, very high uptake rate. Now, you're not going to have the largest audience in the world with that, and that's kind of where growth comes in, and then you can expand from that niche or create supplementary newsletters building on that authority that you've created initially. But finding that niche and understanding where you provide value is one of the core key foundations to launching a successful newsletter. The second one is then understanding the audience. So once you have your niche, then it kind of brings into focus all of these different things about your audience, that you can focus on. So if I was to choose that niche, then I can say, okay, who am I focusing on? Am I focusing on rural, men? Probably not. Like, that doesn't really feel right. Would I be focusing on like young urban women? Maybe, possibly. I mean, that's kind of my context of like, my girlfriend and kind of, who I know. Usually they're more sensitive to that sort of thing. And so that might be kind of where I go in terms of focusing with that audience. But beyond that, it also then helps me understand, where do these people spend their time? Where do they spend their attention? Are they on X and are they on LinkedIn, or are they on TikTok and Instagram, in terms of consuming content in their free time? It also gives you ideas around how to speak to them, the type of imagery and the type of references to make, the type of language to use. All of these things together come together to make up your tone and contribute to a concept that we call content market fit. It's very similar if you read about startups, or if you're involved in like into the business world at all. There's the concept of product market fit that startups are always seeking to find. And when a company hits product market fit, it kind of just like everything's kind of clicking, and customers, are using the product, they're sharing the product, they're like basically beating down your door to pay for your product, and it's kind of like the holy grail of what startups search for. Very similar concept is true for newsletters, where once you find that content and market, so content audience fit, maybe we should call it content audience fit, honestly, that could be better. but you find that content audience fit. That's really where you will start to see organic growth, people sharing the newsletter with friends and colleagues, family, whoever, and you won't really be able to slow down or stop that growth. Your growth will be inhibited only by your commitment to continue publishing, and that's where consistent content comes into play. So that's one half of the consistent content. The other half kind of comes through this discovery process when you are building this habit. It's something that needs to be a habit. Nobody starts out good at writing newsletters, and so getting into a mindset where you are publishing week after week if it's a weekly newsletter, every 2 weeks if it's bi-weekly, whatever that is, producing consistent content so that your audience can build trust in what you are doing is really critically important when we talk about anything that's to come. Because at the end of the day, at the very least, they're making a commitment. They're trusting you with their email. At most, you're actually asking them to pay you for this content. So they need to be able to trust that you're going to deliver on either that very, very kind of standard like table stakes commitment of like delivering them content. But then at most, if you want them to pay for your content, you need to basically have them trust that you're going to continue to to show up. And so you can do that by publishing consistently. I personally recommend people get 5 to 10 editions of their content out before they even kind of launch publicly. This serves two purposes. One, it gives a backlog. It gives kind of your users, as you start to market your publication, gives users a backlog to like read through. So if they do vibe with your first content, they can continue to read. It also kind of avoids that kind of blank page mentality where like if you go to an Instagram page and there's like one box, it's like this looks really, really empty. The third thing it does is it starts to build that habit where there's no external gratification. There's no dopamine hit from publishing something and having those 5 likes come through on LinkedIn, and saying, great, I accomplished something. When you're publishing those 5 before you even launch, it really requires you to have that internal motivation that you're doing this for the sake of doing it and not for that validation, which is really, really important for building the habit. And so I do spend a good amount of time on this slide because really these principles cannot be overstated. Everything else, for the most part, really comes into focus pretty easily and really clicks once these principles are met. And so in this conversation, if this sounds like your newsletter has not really quite cracked that or kind of met that threshold, then I would recommend before you even consider monetization, really focusing on these things and really making sure that your newsletter is humming along and chugging along and growing organically, so that that you have that content audience fit before diving into spending all of this time creating monetizable assets and investing in growth. Because once you have that audience market fit, it becomes everything else, whether it's monetization or growth or whatever, all of it becomes pretty easy. Actually, it becomes pretty intuitive and straightforward what you have to do, and then it's just execution. That's when it comes, you're super busy, but it's like a good busy because you just have so much opportunity rather than like stress because I'm like, I don't know how, where I'm supposed to get subscribers from or why am I not growing more quickly enough. If you have growth problems, the 100% of the time, the solution is revisiting content and finding that content audience fit. So from here, everything that comes from this will assume that you have an audience that is voraciously reading every edition of your newsletter. Maybe not every person, but you're having like a 50+% open rate. People love your content. They're sharing it organically, and basically from there, you're going to have kind of an easier time moving forward. So moving to the first one, sponsorship opportunities. This is kind of like the lowest hanging fruit, within this media. Sponsored emails have existed for like the entire length of time that like email has existed as a medium. So everybody has seen emails if they've gotten newsletters that are sponsored. If you've gotten the Skim, Morning Brew, Hustle, like literally you're here, so you've gotten a newsletter before. This is the typical kind of monetization experience that you see. So open an email, presented by, sponsored by whoever, and then generally there's going to be either display ads or a native ad placement somewhere within that publication. And so the steps here, basically the considerations are when you launch and you're ready to start monetizing through a sponsorship, these are kind of the 4 different things you're going to be looking at. So how do you find sponsors? How do you craft kind of your sponsorship regime or your program? How do you set those rates, and how do you define your ad placements? So first of all, before I jump into any of the details in this, what we're doing here with this presentation is really unpacking the nuts and bolts of these concepts. Uh, if you want this done for you, the Beehiiv Ad Network does all of this for you, and you don't have to do anything. You can literally, if you're on our paid plan, we will send you ad opportunities. We find the sponsors, we negotiate the deals, we show you the rates, and we develop the placements. All you have to do is add it to your newsletter and hit send. So if that's what all you're interested in, you can kind of tone out for the next 5 minutes or so, or 10 minutes, and go make some coffee or something. If you're interested more in learning about the nuts and bolts, maybe running this on your own, or if you're not on Beehiiv and you find yourself in this room, we're going to go through kind of an unpack. And even if you are on Beehiiv and you're using the ad network, this can be maybe useful to understand how the process works. So the first thing is finding sponsors. Usually this works by going and identifying a list of potential companies or brands that might be interested in reaching the audience that you are speaking to. So if you are running, an outdoor newsletter about hiking or something like that, opportunities could be, companies that do outdoor apparel, apps like All Trails that, want to reach that audience, people who are active. One of our coworkers runs a newsletter for local parents, and so somebody reached out to him and said, hey, like, do your audience, own pets, or do they specifically have dogs? So he did a survey and found out like 80% of them had a dog. And so then, they were like, great, we would love to do a ad for like our local grooming company. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. A lot of times it can be a little bit time consuming and manual, in that you're going to be, basically sending a lot of emails, usually unsolicited. You might be reaching out on LinkedIn, and basically having to break through the noise to be able to not only reach the actual people who are in charge of these, programs and that advertising, but then actually then getting into the door and then making that pitch and closing those deals. That kind of sales process can take several weeks, if not more. And you're obviously, it's a kind of a numbers game. You're going to have to be reaching out to a ton of people to be doing this. It also depends on how big your audience is. A lot of times bigger brands, if you don't have a certain size list, don't really have the time to necessarily kind of entertain your offer, because it's just like that doesn't move the needle for them. And so, there are some challenges here, but it's one of the reasons why the Beehiiv Ad Network has been so successful, because we have these, tens of thousands of newsletters on our platform where they can just interface with us once and have access to this whole network. So, but first step, finding sponsorships. The second step is going to be understanding kind of how you're packaging the, the offers. And so, kind of within that, maybe we should make these kind of sub bullets, because within the sponsorship tiers is going to be elements of frequency, the rate that you're charging, and then like what placements or what inventory you're offering. So very commonly in this world, you'll see different packages of like, maybe 100% share of voice for a month, or, one, if you publish weekly, that's 4 emails a month, 1 email a month for an entire quarter. Really, your creativity is really the limiting factor to kind of how these sponsorship programs can work. But essentially, it's basically, what are the options? What are the packages basically that you're offering? Do you want to offer somebody the opportunity to sponsor your newsletter for an entire year? A lot of times that's going to be tougher, even though it's like more consistent income. It's going to be much harder to get that person to commit for an entire year unless you're growing really, really quickly or have a larger list. Versus simply offering them the opportunity to kind of test out your newsletter as a channel to see if there's value there. So within kind of setting those different packages, those 3 elements: frequency, the rate that you're charging, and the actual ad placement. So starting with frequency, frequency would be like kind of how often, not just you're sending, but how often that person is being placed in the newsletter and how often that they're being basically advertised. Again, a lot of times it actually might make more sense to have an advertiser be once every 4 weeks versus every week for a month. A lot of times, customers, will, maybe get a little bit tired of like, seeing the same person every time. And like, those sequential like 1, 2, 3, 4 impressions that a user might have may not be as useful to the brand as having like once and then, a space of like a month and then having another one and then a space of a month and then having a third one. It kind of gives time to solidify in users' memory that brand, which can be, arguably more effective. So that's frequency. It also depends on how often you send. If you're a daily newsletter versus a weekly newsletter, that propositions could be very, very different. And the other value of like kind of having spaced out is that you can also it's more work, but you can also bring on multiple advertisers, which can obviously contribute to perception around the quality of your brand as well as just diversify your income stream. So if you are doing blocks of like 1 month, then like every month you have to go find a new advertiser versus if you're doing 3 month blocks once a week, or sorry, once a month, you have that 3 months to kind of re-up, and you can have 4 different advertisers versus one. And obviously, again, flexibility of this is infinite. The choices you have in order, and kind of how you build these programs is completely up to you. Second one, rates. Usually these programs are negotiated, basically usually down to like a flat rate based on either like expected CPM or a CPC, cost per click. So generally what you'll do is you'll say, hey, we have this package once a month for 3 months, and that package costs X, $300, $400, $700, whatever that is. And when you break that out, advertisers will generally look at that and say, okay, great. How many subscribers do they have? What is their open rate? Subscribers times open rate is number of impressions per send. And so if you have 10,000 subscribers, a 50% open rate, and that means you have 5,000 impressions on a given email. What we mean by CPM, it stands for cost per meal, which is like cost per 1,000 impressions. So if you're getting 5,000 opens or 5,000 impressions, that would basically be 5 of those units. And so newsletters are generally priced, if they're priced on a CPM basis, by a rate times the number of those CPM units. So in this case, if it's 5 units and your rate is $20 CPM, then basically each of those emails would be worth $100. If they're buying a package of 3, maybe the fair market price for that package is like $300. That's the math that they're going to be doing, and they're going to be comparing your channel versus Facebook versus Google versus TikTok versus LinkedIn, wherever they're also operating. And so it can be useful to keep track of benchmarks of like what you might be competing against. The other model that folks might compare you to is a CPC model. So again, in that same kind of realm, you might give them a flat rate, but they're going to be potentially breaking down by a cost per click, which is how many clicks they get. And so this is measured by your click rate, so number of clicks divided by the number of opens. So in that same scenario, 10,000 subscribers, 5,000 opens. If you get 50 clicks out of those 5,000 on an ad, that's a 1% click-through rate. You get those 50 clicks. They may be calculating, okay, normally on our other channels, our cost per clicks our average is like maybe $2.50. So if we want to kind of be at parity for that cost per click, $2.50 times 50 clicks. In that case, what's the math on that? That'd be $125. So, basically the way they may look at it is kind of combining those two. So you're on a CPM basis, the email is worth 100. On a CPC basis, the email is worth 125. If you're kind of doing that math for them, you can basically go in and price that in a way that's going to make sense for everyone and make the sales process a little bit easier. So in that case, if you're doing the math for yourself, you know your audience, you know your industry, you know your metrics, you can come up with pricing that's very, very attractive and very compelling when you're talking to these people and making your pitch. The last thing is ad placement. So like, what are you actually offering them? Are you offering them basically the sponsorship opportunity and like one ad inventory? Some folks add multiple pieces of like native ad blocks within their newsletter. So you might have like the sponsor by with a primary block, and then you might even have a secondary block down beneath. Usually when you're doing something like that, you're a bit more sophisticated, and the pricing is going to basically differ by those different placements. But if that's something kind of more advanced topic, drop that in the chat. We'd be happy to talk more about it. But people starting out, we don't need to necessarily go into like multi-ad placement, conversation here today. So that is kind of sponsorship in a nutshell. We'll include, yeah, sorry, Tony's got a question. Yeah, sure. So I'm hearing that there's a question in the chat or questions about how we provision ads. So within our platform, we obviously can see your past performance. We can see how many, like the subscribers number, the count of subscribers that you have. And then through the tags that you set for your publication, we're able to see, what your newsletter is about. And so the question was like, how does our ad provisioning process work? When an advertiser comes to us, they tell us kind of who they're trying to reach, and then we use these signals that are generated by your newsletters to identify basically newsletters that would be a good fit for that. And so when we find a newsletter that's a good fit, we have a process where basically that fit is found, and then you'll get a notification in your dashboard that you have folks that want to be sponsored. If you give me 1 second, I can show you what that looks like if there's interest in that. It sounds like there might be. So let's see. Okay, well, we'll just do it up here. All right, so, oh, that's Tyler's stuff. Hopefully he doesn't mind. All right, cool. So this is like a test publication. Basically, not a test one, this is one that I run, that I use for demos. You can see in here basically when an advertisement opportunity comes along, they basically show up here. It gives you the idea of like what the advertiser is, when they want to run the, go back. Who the advertiser is, what they're about, when they want the ad run, and basically what they're willing to pay. You can basically click into here, view expected potential payouts. You can slide this to kind of see what you might get in terms of payouts. You can select the date in which you want to run it. And then we usually provide multiple different variations provided by the advertiser that, multiple different versions so that they fit your actual publication. Within the platform, it's as simple as you come in here within your editor. We have this advertisement widget, so you're just going to drop that. I don't actually have any provisioned right now, but essentially when you have a provisioned ad that's on the calendar, it shows up right here, and then you just basically click it and it inserts a placeholder right there. You can then also add that setting right here to basically have the logo at the top of the newsletter that says like presented by, and then the logo of the advertiser. So in terms of actually placing it, provisioning it, placing it, super, super simple. And the way that these work, there's no bulk provisioning right now. It's not like there's no kind of, with regard to what I just was talking about, we talk about like, making a deal where you're doing like 4 emails or 3 emails a quarter or something like that. We don't have anything like that set up where like you'd have like that consistency, but I would imagine that in the future that's probably would come along, where you can say, hey, I want to accept this deal and I'm going to run it once a month for like multiple months. Cool. All right, next, paid subscriptions and memberships. So kind of the next most popular way of monetization, I would say, is basically building out a subscription model for premium content. So this is something that beehiiv has had really since the very beginning, and something we're very proud of. We have feature parity with like some of the most popular tools in the market, like Patreon or Memberful. You can run a full membership community through beehiiv. You can run really any kind of paid membership or paid subscription program through beehiiv today. We have different capabilities around payment frequencies, payment amounts, even stuff like pay what you want, donation based, and multiple tiers. So you could create like a bronze, silver, gold type of situation. The idea here is to create a subscription model that matches what your audience is willing to pay for and isn't really interested in. So if you have a really, really rapidly loyal audience, then that might look like creating kind of like a founders program where they're going to pay a one-time fee for lifetime access, versus if you have like more of a mass market newsletter, the willingness to pay of the customer might be a bit lower, so you might do like $2 or $3 a month, and basically that works. So it really comes down to the specifics of your content and your newsletter and your audience, of like how you would set up that program and like the details of that subscription model. But the first step is going to be determined, like, what does it even look like? How often do I want to charge people? What do I want to offer? So monthly, annual, one time? Do I want to have multiple subscriber tiers, etc.? And so, yeah, that's determining the subscription model. Price points, usually, if you have like a monthly cost, you're going to give a little bit of a discount for a yearly cost, maybe 10 or 20%. And then like if you do like a one-time payment for lifetime access, you might do an even bigger one. In terms of like what you're offering, this can really look like, your imagination again is really the limit here. There's people who send an entirely extra newsletter. Maybe your Sunday edition, you normally send it on Wednesday, but you send out an extra edition on Sunday that only premium users get. Some folks, all of their content is premium, so they don't even run a free version, or if they do run a free version, it's basically kind of the drip series or marketing that basically encourages upsells. You can support that with beehiiv pretty easily through our paywall widget, where you can have a preview. You can have preview text, and then there's a this widget you drop in, and everything below the preview is going to be only for premium subscribers, and with a call to action for free users to upgrade, which is actually probably one of the more effective methods, in that you can collect free subscribers through things like ads, and then they're still going to get your emails, but they're going to basically get that preview. And if you are providing compelling content that people are willing to pay for, that curiosity that they're generating in that first part of the email can be powerful enough to get people to upgrade. I've seen that run successfully several times, specifically kind of in the finance or investing space. Is very, very popular. But it doesn't have to be an extra email. It can be access to the web archive. It can be private access to a community that's either something that's off platform. We're going to be building in community support later, either this year, kind of towards the second half of the year. Really, whatever you want to offer. It could be physical products. You could when they upgrade, you could send them something. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that the value that you're offering matches what your audience is willing to pay for, and you're able to make that sale. So from there, we have a bunch of built-in features to support this, but there's a couple things go into this. One, these programs are not set it and forget it. You have to always be thinking about how you're going to not only upgrade new users through your kind of growing subscriber base, but also retaining users. So you want to be basically making sure that you're always collecting feedback from those paying subscribers, keeping them happy, and executing on some various retention strategies in order to kind of make sure that they're happy. So a lot of times we see people set up automations around a week before their subscription is due to renew, basically saying, hey, how are you feeling about the subscription? Is there anything we could be doing better? Basically collecting that feedback and trying to get ahead of anybody that might churn. The same way, maybe a little bit less kind of negatively, collecting feedback on what's really, really working, because those users have clearly found a ton of value that they're willing to pay for. So using that feedback of why did you pay for this newsletter? What am I doing well? Can help you then really double down and focus on those elements that have led you to creating such a compelling offer that they were willing to pay for. In terms of payment platforms, we operate through Stripe. For better or worse, it's a limitation of the platform. We are very happy with Stripe. But if you're not on beehiiv, then you may want to be looking and considering what are the different platforms that are out there to support your paid program, and basically where are they accessible? Where does your audience live? Where can people actually access your payment system, and what are the fees that are going to be associated with that? With us, we charge a 0% management fee for the premium subscriptions. The only fee you'll get is not charged by us, it's charged by Stripe. It's the standard processing fee. But other platforms also may charge you a percentage of the subscription. Substack, for example, is going to charge you 10% into infinity. Basically, whether you're at 1 subscriber or you're at 100,000 subscribers, you're going to basically be paying them a 10% fee for the privilege. So there's that. Premium content offers. This is kind of what that might look like. So in this case, this is an example from Lenny's newsletter. This is an offer that he negotiated with the company Perplexity, which is an AI, one of these language learning, or not language learning, large language model tools where you can ask AI questions. But essentially, basically it's an offer where it's if you upgrade to the premium version, you not only get the premium version of the newsletter and you get the premium access, but you're also going to get Perplexity Pro for an entire year, just included in that $20 a month offer. So what does it look like? It can be something like that where you negotiate a deal. Like I said before, it can be content that they're getting that they didn't get before, but bundling packages is something that's really, really popular these days. But just understanding from engaging with your audience and getting feedback from them on what kind of gets them excited. Your imagination is really the limitation here. Cool. So this is kind of a newer method that has emerged in the last couple of years, led by companies like us and a couple others. But there's a concept of, we call it sponsored co-registration. It's kind of like a very complicated name for just basically saying, hey, I'm going to recommend subscribers to you, and if they subscribe, you know, you're going to give me $1. So you could consider it like a paid referral program or kind of like an affiliate program. But essentially, what we mean by sponsored co-registration is we have a system, a marketplace called Boosts, and all it means is that when somebody subscribes to a newsletter that is using this marketplace, subscriber A signs up to newsletter A, and then when after they've subscribed, they're shown this widget to the right that says, hey, you know, the author of newsletter A thinks that you also might be interested in these newsletters. And so these 3 are all sponsored. They have the sponsored badge, but that user then has the option to opt into subscribing to any of these other newsletters. They could subscribe to 3 of them, or they could subscribe to 1 of them, or they could subscribe to none of them. What Boost does is that when a user who's already subscribed to your newsletter subscribes to one of these other newsletters, you get paid whatever the pre-negotiated rate is. So Big Desk Energy may be willing to pay you $1.20 for every subscriber that you refer to them. So when a user subscribes to your newsletter and then subscribes to Big Desk Energy, you make $1.20. Now, if you're growing, you know, if you're running ads and you're growing at a couple hundred subscribers per month, it's gonna be a very, very lucrative way to basically either offset the cost of your ads and or basically turn into a profit center for your newsletter. Obviously, with organic growth, organic users are seeing this as much as paid, and so that's kind of where that arbitrage can come. But you know, this is kind of like the unlimited money hack machine. This gets into a little bit of a growth, kind of a growth lesson here. But if you're running ads on Facebook, it's not uncommon to be able to get a you know, cost per subscriber somewhere around $1, maybe $1.20, maybe a little bit less than $1. If you can do that, and if you're in a niche that, you know, is kind of supports the cost, some of the more mass market niches will only pay, you know, 60 or 80 cents. Some of the more focused ones around business topics might pay anywhere from $1.80 to $3. You know, say you're getting subscribers for $1.20, and you know, somebody's willing to pay you $1 if you subscribe to them. You can really basically cut your cost of your growth to either very little. Sometimes we see it negative, where you're actually making more money from each subscriber than you're spending. And at the minimum, the goal would be to kind of get to neutral. But in any case, if you can get to neutral, it basically means that your growth is free. You can basically pay and scale that growth infinitely. We actually have something that we haven't actually shared with the public quite yet, that I'm going to just call an audible real quick and put Tony on the spot. Tony, if you could grab our Boosts calculator that we just finished yesterday and launched. We haven't even promoted this at all. This is a first time that anyone is seeing this from the public, as far as I know. Tony's going to drop this in the chat, but basically, if you're interested to see how much you might be able to make with Boosts, we built this calculator to basically show you. So you're going to put in your existing number of subscribers. You're going to put in how many subscribers you're growing by per month. Both of these are shown on the dashboard, so very easy to find these numbers if you're already on beehiiv. You can go to here on the dashboard. And so here, you know, I'll go back to 12 months. You can see basically active subscribers. This is your previous number of subscribers. So what you can do is, like, if you have I would put this down. I think the way our calculator works is you want it to be on a monthly basis. So put this to 4 weeks and say this number is 303 and the previous number is 270. You do 303, the number is not 270, so you're not being gaslit. I'm just saying, imagine it was 303 minus 270. That means you grew by 33 subscribers in the past month. And so what we can do is we'll do a little walkthrough here real quick. So if I were to do that, 303 new subscribers per month, 33. These are the averages that, you know, we see across the network. So we'll put that in. We just have this. If you've already signed up for the webinar, you actually probably shouldn't have to fill this out. Tony, can we make sure with Ethan that this is validated based on our progressive profiling? I don't think it is, because I filled it out like every time I've done it, but I could be wrong. So from here, basically, it's going to show you what your growth rate is, and basically how much, if you implemented Boosts and you continue to grow, how much you could be making per month after 12 months. And so you can play with some of these things. So if your verification rate is higher than normal, verification rate just means that these subscribers that you're sending over are not just legit users, but also are engaging. That's kind of one of the features on the grow side of the marketplace. People who are paying for subscribers only pay for subscribers who are actually active and engaged with their emails. So you will not get necessarily the payout on 100% of the folks that click on that, but it's basically the way that we kind of balance the marketplace to make sure that there's like tons of value for both sides. But essentially, you can basically play with these numbers and project out like what you might expect to make. So if you're in maybe more of a mass market and it's kind of less, but you're growing more quickly than 10%, we'll move this up. Say we're going to invest in growth heavily, and we're going to hope for a little bit of a higher than average verification rate. You can basically see the range. The range is kind of worst case, medium case, and high case. We built this off of a standard deviation model. So these ranges above and below are going to be basically, this kind of area right here is within 2 standard deviations of the average. And so usually it's going to be somewhere kind of right along this line. Anyway, that is to say some pretty cool kind of stuff you can do with that. The other thing I would say is, Tony, I forgot to even include this. We also have one for our paid subscriptions as well. I think now is our ad network. I don't know if we launched the ad network one, but if we didn't launch the ad network one, that one's coming today. But if you want to drop the paid subscriptions one for people here in the chat, this is also a beehiiv exclusive that nobody has seen yet. Cool. So just in terms of notes here, I explained how it works. I explained the definition. I explained the revenue model. Basically for us, you kind of ethical, legal considerations. If you're using a tool that's not us, you got to make sure that they have the sponsored badge. FTC regulations show that you have to make users known and aware that this is sponsored and not an organic recommendation. Also, some platforms will automatically pre-check all of these, which basically makes it look like there's like a lot of growth happening when a lot of times users don't actually know that they're being subscribed to these newsletters. This is a huge problem we particularly see when people are coming from platforms like Substack, where they're used to kind of this organic growth. And then when we actually look at their list and we say, okay, looking at all the users who came from a method like this, who's actually engaging with the list, you actually see a ton of subscribers who have never even opened a single email. And this actually leads to a problem that's like kind of a good problem to have, but like it ends up being like net negative. A lot of times we see this very interesting experience where people move from Substack and they send their first message and they see a huge spike in spam. And they come to us and saying, hey, what gives? Like, why are you guys seeing, like, why are we getting a huge spike in spam? We just moved to beehiiv. And the issue is, weirdly enough, it's kind of the opposite problem that they think they have. It's that there's all of these subscribers on their list that didn't know that they subscribed to the newsletter, but have never seen an edition of the newsletter because it was going to their promotions, it was going to their spam account. And then they move to beehiiv and they actually receive the email in their main inbox for the first time. And they're like, I never subscribed to this. Like, what is this? What's going on here? And then they mark it spam. And so it's really, really one of the biggest issues we have with the kind of these dark patterns that Substack perpetuates. It's, in our opinion, completely unethical and does not help subscribers. And in fact, hurts deliverability. It hurts kind of what they're going through. And so basically, just some things to be aware of if you're using different tools, that have some of these recommendations features built in. One of the things that we actually see a lot less people use than maybe they could be is kind of traditional affiliate marketing. And so this is something that as you start to grow your following, I highly, highly recommend. We have launched our own partner program. We launched it about 2.5 years ago. We offer basically a 50-50 revenue share for any clients, any customers that get referred to us. And that does about 14% of our company revenue. Incredibly successful. Affiliate networks basically are saying, hey, if you send me a customer, I'm willing to pay you for that referral. Kind of similar to what we just talked about with the co-reg, but there's tons of different platforms, beehiiv, Amazon. Most big companies have, or most companies generally have some sort of partner program where you can sign up as an affiliate. They'll give you an affiliate link. And basically, if you share that link and somebody clicks it and makes a purchase, you get credit for that. And typically that credit means you get paid. So I use the example of Amazon because it's one of the largest and most successful ones out there. But if you're running a newsletter where you're doing any kind of like product recommendations, perfect placement to, you want to make the disclosure and say, hey, like this is an affiliate link so that people know you're getting compensated. but can be a really, really incredible way if done ethically, transparently, and sparingly to just basically diversify and expand those income streams. Obviously, you don't want to just create a newsletter where every link is an affiliate link and the entire purpose of the newsletter is just to share affiliate links. But if you're running a newsletter where like 90% of the content, is just like your editorial content, and then you have a section of like, here's, some products from around the web that I found useful, and then you have a little disclaimer saying like these are affiliate links. Usually that will contribute to, over time to a significant, potentially amount of revenue. So when you're looking at these, there's different affiliate networks like Impact, PartnerStack, Rewardful, Share a Sale. If you Google affiliate, publisher affiliate networks, you'll see a bunch of them. Basically, look at kind of how they're positioned and like what they're getting paid, how you get paid. Some of them get paid, pay out on a click. Some of them even pay out on an impression. Most of the time you're getting paid for a specific conversion. But basically, yeah, check out those conversion structures to see how the payouts work, to make sure that you're there. Cool. Oh, I'm clicking on my screen, not the right thing. Lastly, this is one thing that I kind of hesitated to include, but I think is a really, really cool idea that Beehiiv doesn't support explicitly as like a feature standalone yet, but it's something I think is really has a lot of potential, and that is job boards. So a lot of times these are going to work mostly like kind of best for publications where you have a very, very specific niche and you have a very tight understanding of who your audience is. So, this is an IT support group, is a newsletter that runs on Beehiiv. That's targeted IT professionals, a very, very focused group. They have when we did the presentation, they had 14,000 subscribers making like 80 grand a year. And I don't actually recall whether it's just through ads, but like they would be the example of a newsletter that'd be perfect to have a job board where companies, are always looking for talent. It's one of the big challenges that companies face is like where to find and how to get in front of the right talent. And so if you can basically as a company get in front of your exact target audience and potentially the applicant pool, it can be really, really valuable to be able to pay to get placement there. So basically, if you're running a newsletter where your audience is very, very tightly defined, it can be very kind of straightforward to then be able to reach out to either recruiters or companies themselves and to say, hey, for a rate of X, I'd be willing to place, your job in my newsletter as a placement. So you can see how one user has done. I guess this is no desk is remote jobs. You can see how they basically have a section of their newsletter where they feature these remote jobs. User clicks on it, it takes them to the listing. But it's a way that you can, at minimum, kind of run it like a sponsorship program where you're just going to pay, to get placed. If you get more sophisticated, and depending on how sophisticated your client is, there is the chance that you can kind of get, kind of act more as like a recruiter or like a headhunter where you can even get commissions on like successful applicants if you're kind of being that core source and they're not just being handed off to someone else. So kind of a cool, unique way, kind of that kind of flies on the radar a lot of times. Finally, when we talk about getting paid and monetizing a newsletter, some people have the goal of exiting. So when we say exiting, I mean having your newsletter sold. I've had, over the 3 years I've been here at Beehiiv, I've had 4 interns, and 2 of them have exited from newsletters they started after they joined Beehiiv. One of them still works with us and runs an empire of like a bunch of newsletters that he's acquiring and rolling into big ones. So I have no doubt that either he'll continue to own that as a cash flowing asset or exit that at some point. But newsletters can be a very, very lucrative way to basically build up something that you can then sell and make a little bit of money. Now, I'm not talking you're going to make $1 billion on like a SaaS startup exit. Most likely that's not, but there's companies like Glossier and I think was it Betch, that basically started from media publications like newsletters that then built into e-com brands that then do quite well. So I'm not saying you can't actually build a real kind of substantial like commerce-based company off of a newsletter. You absolutely can. But kind of at a smaller scale, there's actually a lot of users of Beehiiv who have like kind of cracked the code of like how to build newsletters, how to attract an audience, how to build their niche. And essentially what they do for a living is they build newsletters, they quality, real content, they build up their subscriber base, and then they basically sell them and then rinse and repeat. So in this case, if this is in your future, this is something you're considering, Things to consider: valuation basics. Usually, this is going to be done on the basis of like your subscriber count and how engaged they are. So, common models are going to be, price per subscriber. So we'll pay, $4 per subscriber for your newsletter. So if you had 10,000 subscribers, that's probably a little small to sell, but 25,000 subscribers at $4 a subscriber would be $100,000. That's probably a big deal. That's probably not typical. Maybe it's like $2 per subscriber, or $2.50 or something like that. It depends on the audience. If it's like a really, really niche, like B2B, high value newsletter where you're getting like an $80 CPM, like obviously that's going to fetch more than something that's like a meme based newsletter. Who buys newsletters? All kinds of people. You have newsletter operators who want to buy them to fold them into existing portfolios or into existing newsletters. You have people who want to build portfolios of different media properties. You may even have brands that want to expand their marketing into content marketing, but don't necessarily want to start from scratch. There's marketplaces like Deuce and Flippa. Pretty much all of these like digital online marketplaces for buying and selling businesses these days have marketplaces for newsletters. And I think Deuce specifically has like a beehiiv specific section, if I recall. Preparing for sale, just like any kind of company, having all your numbers and your ducks in a row is really important in terms of like, when you start to enter into those conversations around due diligence. So understanding where your subscribers come from, understanding your numbers, understanding the value of your subscribers, the lifetime value of a subscriber based on the different ways you're monetizing is super important. If you're kind of building to do this, maximizing exit value, focus on niches that are very valuable. And when you say valuable, meaning the folks that you're kind of creating subscribers around are very hard to reach, are kind of high value individuals that are going to fetch like a high CPM. So again, B2B SaaS newsletters, if you can crack that and say you're building a newsletter that's read by 10,000 CMOs, that's going to be super, super valuable, way more useful than a meme newsletter that's read by 10,000 of people that you just don't know who they are. I mean, it's not even that they could be CMOs. It's like not that there's anything wrong with the specific people. It's like when you just go broad, it's a much more focused experience. It's a much less focused experience, and that decreases the potential value. Cool. Post-sale considerations. Once you sell, at least on beehiiv, we can help transition the ownership. You want to make sure that that transition goes smoothly. The money clears and stuff like that. A lot of times what will happen is that if you are an operator of the newsletter personally, you're the writer, you're doing everything. There can sometimes be like stipulations of like earnouts where you'll have to continue working and operating the newsletter for X number of months before you earn the kind of remainder of the payout, so that there's like continuity and it's just not, dumping it. But yeah, those are definitely things that we can do. Now, ignore this guy, although don't ignore him generally. He's a great guy. I'm going to let Tony queue up the questions that we have for me real quick. And while he does that, I always like to plug our Slack community. So if this conversation was valuable today, we actually have a Slack community that talks specifically about monetization. And there's like dozens, if not hundreds of messages each week, people talking about different methods to monetize. So if this was valuable, I can't more highly recommend the Slack community. In addition to that monetization channel, there's literally 19 other channels where you can commune with other newsletter operators. These are active beehiiv publishers who are building their businesses, building their publications, figuring it out. We have channels for things like design, deliverability, growth, you name it, recommendations, you name it, we got a channel for it. It's one of the most valuable places, and so it's not any additional cost. It comes with the paid subscription to your beehiiv account. When you upgrade, you'll get an email with a link to the invite, and so you, and if you're working with a team, are all welcome to join. But if you're on the fence, this can be a really, really compelling value add. Like I said, more than 35, almost 3,600 people in this group right now, all active publishers, paying beehiiv users. So I think that Tony probably has some questions that he has answered. We'll answer those. Cool. Yeah. Cool. So two questions here that we have. One, the first is, interest in understanding the metrics around like when adding ads makes sense. So subscriber threshold, click-through stats, etc. So there's not a right or wrong reason or like right or wrong answer here. It really depends on kind of the engagement level of your audience. I would say, really the kind of the sweet spot where we see ads starting to work is like probably like minimum like I'd say 1 to 2,000, just because um, you know you can certainly opt in sooner than that, and if you're on a paid plan, it doesn't cost anything extra to do that. But we with our free plan, we have our free plan set to 2,500 users, because when you get to that 2,500 users point, there's like less than 2,500 users, you can build a newsletter completely for free up to 2,500 subscribers incredibly easily without all of the extra features that we offer. And if you were to do that, as soon as you then are forced to upgrade to the paid plan, if you've built to 2,500 subscribers, those features are going to set your newsletter on fire. If you've gotten to that point, that is an incredible achievement. And basically, our perspective is like you don't actually need all the extra bells and whistles to grow prior to that. And it's like if you've hit product market fit and 2,500 subscribers without the paid features, as soon as you get access to those, it's going to be like going from black and white to color. And so certainly 2,500 would be a minimum point where you could just call it 2,500. I have seen users with fewer do have success, but it's like if you have 1,000 subscribers and a 70% open rate, at the end of the day, that's like even on a CPM basis, if you're at 700 subscribers opening and 700 impressions, so 0.7 CPM. It's only going to be a couple dollars, especially. And then if you look at click-through rates, usually ad click-through rates hover around like 0.5%. And so, of those 700, 1% would be 7. So 0.5% would be 3. That's like, 3 out of 700 people. I'd say that's probably can be even a little high, because a lot of times the value is people seeing the ad, they don't necessarily click it. And so, at $1 CPM, it's like, in either case, it's about $2 or $3 at 1,000 subscribers, if you're using kind of the built-in tool. So I'd say, they're definitely more useful once you get bigger, which is why we kind of talk about all these other things. If you have 700 or if you have 1,000 subscribers, you're going to make way more money selling a $5 a month premium subscription, and it's way easier to do that. And so it's not just like a one or the other. It's like look at the landscape and you want to figure out kind of what makes the most sense for kind of your entire newsletter holistically. How much should I trust for ad space if my audience isn't that big yet? I know my creativity is what matters, but sponsors need to see the value in reaching a certain number of people for it to be worthwhile for them. In that way, if you are going after advertisers on your own, I think my approach would be kind of twofold. Would be if you have like a graphic design newsletter and you want to get Adobe, for example, you're going to need a pretty large audience to do that. If you are a creativity newsletter and you want to go after a creative AI startup that just is like still pretty small and growing quickly, you're way more likely to be able to reach those people who are looking to deploy funds and looking to grow. And you're, if they're kind of a small company and you're not necessarily a huge newsletter, but you have a very engaged, focused audience, that could make more sense. And so I would say in two ways. One, understand kind of like who it is you're talking to and like when it makes sense to go after these varying size clients. Like try to find someone who's kind of at you're not at your size, because that can be hard to assess, but like somebody who might be kind of related in terms of like where they're at in their journey. And then in terms of charging for ad space, what you can do is what I would personally recommend doing is looking at benchmarks around like what different types of content across other platforms go for and basically peg there. One of the challenges personally, I'm going to share this, I don't know, I mean, maybe I shouldn't, but like one of the challenges I have personally as someone in charge of media buying, is that a lot of times when we get media kits from it's not just newsletter creators, it's just like generally people who are like creators on social media in general, the media kit values are completely not within like the realm of realism in terms of like what you can get to like target very, very specific people through platforms like Facebook and Meta and Google and LinkedIn. They have these fantastically successful ad networks because they work. They're very, very successful and very useful and very performant at being able to target the right user and basically get them to take an action, which at the end of the day, most advertisers, that's what they're interested in. So what I mean by saying all of this is to say, if I can pay $20, a $20 CPM to get in front of my exact target user on LinkedIn, and like be super sure that like I'm reaching the right title and the right person and the right whatever, and I can see that that campaign is really really successful. If I'm paying a $20 CPM for that, and then I get pitched a $40 CPM for something that like I get less data from and less specificity from, it just doesn't really make sense. It's not appealing from an advertiser perspective. And so that's where I would say like look at the benchmarks, look at what's out there, and basically if you can align your media kit and your pricing with kind of the market broadly, you will have way more success. Like if somebody came to me and is like said, you know, they see that we're paying a $15 CPM for TikTok subscribers or TikTok users or whatever, and they basically price their pitch at, you know, 12, 10 or $12, you know, pretty much at any size audience, we're going to take that deal. And it just comes down to being, you know, like basically a rational decision. If we can basically get a better price and place inventory, we're going to do it. And so in that case, like if you can have your pricing make sense, you're going to have a lot more success and a lot less resistance to people just being able to be like, yes, absolutely, let's do it. Here's the, you know, the address to send the invoice. So there we go. I see there's a couple more chats in the chat, but thank you so much for joining us today. I told you we were going to go right down to the wire and we were going to go a few minutes over. So if you've stuck with us this far, really, really appreciate you sticking with us, just going the couple minutes over. I hope this was as valuable for you as it was fun for me. And as I see that Tony has shared, my email is in the chat. If you have any questions, if you want, you know, me to go deeper on anything, again, specifically if you are a paid user and you have not received that invite, drop me an email. We can send you the link. Margot, thank you for the thanks from Luxembourg. I'm literally going to tell my buddy who I watched all of Patriot with that I met somebody from Luxembourg online today. So that's amazing. You made my day. Cool. Anyway, thank you all. Appreciate your time. We look forward so much to what you build on beehiiv. We do this for you guys. We do this because people show up. You know, we are so appreciative of your time and your business, and it's our commitment that we build the best platform on the planet for you guys. And so that's our commitment to you. If we ever, you know, are falling short of that commitment, please hold us accountable. It's why we wake up every day. It's why we do this work, because we have the fire to be the best in the world. And so our constituents in that case are you guys. So thank you so much for your time, and we will see you soon online. Bye-bye.